So good afternoon, my name's David Taylor. I'm the Immersive Tech Capability Lead at Kinetic. We're on the VRAI stand and I'm with Niall Campion. Niall, do you want to introduce yourself?
So my name is Niall Campion. I'm Managing Director of Product and Customers at VRAI. So I basically talk to end users, establish what they need and then design products to fit them. As a company, I guess, with that, we make data-driven virtual reality simulations.
So now, what I'm interested in today is how AI works with immersive technology. So how does AI align with those sorts of technologies?
Yeah, so I feel like in general we're kind of at an interesting confluence of technologies at the moment. So that's VR, AI, cloud computing, and machine learning, CG or 5G. And so for us, like, AI is important because what we do in VR is we use it as a tool to capture data from users. So as they go through the simulator, we capture basic things like eye tracking data, input, output data, and capture big data sets. So data sets so big that maybe it's too complicated for a human to comprehend. So like we're doing a project with VRAI we're going to have 1.2 billion data points. Okay. And so in order to make that data meaningful, we run machine learning across it, so machine learning being a type of AI. So it's really that, it's about making big data sets understandable to humans.
Okay. In terms of immersive technology, what do you think is particularly disruptive or innovative about immersive technologies?
In the training space specifically, is that?
Yeah, training space, yeah.
So yeah, I guess as a training company, like what we think immersive tech lets us do is reduce the cost of simulation training. So traditionally where you're thinking about simulation training for like fighter pilots or surgeons, they're big expensive pieces of equipment. And so what immersive technology lets us do is bring that technology to sort of anyone who needs it to do that.
So how might AI and immersive technology transform the defence and security training in particular?
Yeah, so it's probably the same, I guess it's the same general concept. So simulators were probably the domain of like fighter pilots or like specialists in defence and security. Whereas what we feel we can do now is bring that like down to even the squaddy level. So like we have an experience that's training crews for vehicles in VR. So it's about bringing these technologies, but once we're the sole domain of sort of the high value, like, you know, expensive to train jobs, to kind of bring that to everyone. And what that lets them do is train in a sort of safer and more measurable way.
And in terms of those sorts of measurements that you take, can you give me an example of one of those types of measurements that you are able to take and the use of AI in that measurement?
Yeah, so I guess it's maybe a project we're doing with the RAF, which is around capturing or trying to codify something called airmanship. So airmanship is defined as the non-technical skills required to operate an aircraft, from planning to debrief. And so that's currently quite a subjective thing to measure. So it's an instructor sitting beside a student saying like, your airmanship is good or your airmanship isn't good. Whereas we're now capturing 24 million data points per user, and then we can start to apply machine learning across that and then be able to say, well, this student has good airmanship definitively because they're hitting the metrics that an experienced pilot has shown proves good airmanship.
And in terms of looking ahead, sort of maybe 5, even 10 years in advance, what do you say is the most interesting developments that we might see in AI that might help you in your business?
I guess it's maybe the tools, so maybe not for us specifically, but like I guess in business in general, it'll be off-the-shelf tools that are available for anyone to start using AI in their own businesses. You know? So 5 to 10 years, I would see a situation where like I have a big data set and I want to do something with this. Like there's an algorithm I can sort of license or download that lets me analyze that and get some interesting results. Like in a broader sense, it's probably like the sort of more ethical AI where that feels like that's where it's moving towards, you know, rather than it just being a black box that the data goes into and then spits out the results. As people become more literate with AI, they understand, well, like this is what's being done with data and this is how it's being processed. So I think that's something that's maybe going to come in the next couple of years.
And in terms of AI itself, what sort of challenges do we face in the coming years with the way AI technology is developing?
So it's probably the inverse of that, which is like, if it starts to become a black box technology, increasingly decisions are being made in our lives based on data that we're generating. And if we don't have any insight into how that data is being used, then that, for me, becomes a challenge. And that's why, for us as a company, like, we're always quite transparent and open with what we do with the data and how we capture it and sort of. So that for me is maybe the challenge.
So really the development of explainable AI is the area that we...
Yeah, exactly.
And if you go back to immersive technology, and maybe just looking 12, 18 months in advance, what do you see as the the most exciting changes that are going to happen within the industry?
Like in the particular training space, like there's maybe two things I'd like to see. We focus a lot on biometrics, and so we're using a headset here, which is HP on the set. And so for me, that's the first headset that's come out that has built-in biometrics, so like heart rate monitor. So that's really interesting, and that gives us a whole new set of data we can start to invest in. And then the other will be haptics. So as to make the simulator smaller, but more high fidelity, sort of portable haptics, I think we're going to be really interested to see how that develops.
Haptics is one area that really is moving on quite quickly from what I can see as well, so yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Well, that's Niall and VRAI.